BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
You're about to listen to another episode of the food programme. Episodes will be released weekly wherever you get your podcasts. But if you're in the UK, you can listen to the latest episodes a whole week earlier than anywhere else. First on BBC Sounds.
Okay, Matt, so we have got the chart in front of us, which is all of the stuff that we need to do before we move, which is making me feel a bit stressed. How are we on this list, Matt? What are you working on at the minute?
At the moment, trying to cancel the internet, TV, council tax, utilities.
My life has gone a little bit crazy.
Subscriptions that might be around that I've forgotten about. I've booked the removals, that's confirmed, but we still need to send them a list of the inventory.
My name is Leyla Kazim, and a few years ago, my husband Matt and I made a huge life-changing decision that is now finally happening. I'm just thinking, what are we going to sleep on when we're there?
We'll have to buy a blow-up bed and some bedding.
Do we have all of our packing material?
No, not everything. We've got all the cardboard boxes, but
We are leaving the only lives we've known, our urban lives in London, to relocate to rural Portugal. So, why are we doing this? Well, I have been driven by a desire to pursue a more self-sufficient life for many years now. I'm answering a calling to live off the land, and it is something I feel deep within the marrow of my bones. 3 years ago, we bought a 3-acre plot of land in the countryside near Lisbon, gently sloping to the south and overlooking a beautiful valley. Our intention is to produce much of our own food in a way that regenerates the soil. We hope to transform the land into a productive, abundant and climate-resilient oasis that is biodiverse in plants, crops, wildlife and fungi. Well, that's the theory. There's also the small matter of building a house. There is currently only a ruin on the land. There is a lot to do. Oh, okay, so boxes. Oh my gosh, I feel like I live in a land of cardboard boxes at the minute. Yes. 6 rolls of packing tape. And to top it all off, we're moving soon, very soon, next month in fact. That's why everything has gone a little bit crazy. It's chaos, really. I'm looking everywhere and all I'm seeing is kind of chaos and cardboard. And there are already no shortage of challenges. I'm no farmer. I've only ever grown a few vegetables in my small city garden. I have never even had a pet. And I don't speak Portuguese, not yet anyway, which I think all sounds a little bit mad, right? Our neighbourhood is sleepy, our lives are wonderful. I have at points been asking myself, why are we willfully disrupting this peace? So, given my considerable skills gaps and the fact we are leaping blindly, but with purpose, into a world that is completely new to the both of us, later in this programme, I will quite urgently be seeking out some pro bono advice to help me pursue my self-sufficiency dreams. Dreams that friends often compare to one classic TV programme. The Good Life first aired 50 years ago, and the story of Tom and Barbara Good rejecting the rat race to turn their city garden into a small holding has a lot in common with what I'm trying to achieve. Here's Tom laying out his grand plan in the very first episode.
I quit work, and we become as damn near self-sufficient as possible. We've got bags of garden, we grow our own food. We keep some animals, chickens, a pig. We produce our own energy, recycle rubbish. We design the things we need. I'll show you what being a draftsman is really all about. Now, some things we can't make, right. And some things we can't grow, right. So we flog our surplus and buy stuff, and that's without good old medieval barter. It'll be damned hard work. We won't have much in the way of mod cons, but we might even enjoy discovering what we can do without. And we won't need the world and his wife to give us the yay or nay.
Half a century on, and people still fondly remember the antics of Tom and Barbara, as well as Margot and Jerry next door.
My mum and dad used to love The Good Life. I always remember the one, I think, where he makes a jumper out of stinging nettles or something. This really crap jumper out of stinging nettles.
The goat incidents were always hilarious.
I remember the pea pod wine and that being my first revelation that you can make wine from pretty much anything.
It made people maybe think about the pressures of the commuting life, and that life in suburbia is not always jolly. People are under huge amounts of pressure. As a fifth-generation farmer, I wouldn't want to live that life, not for a minute.
Yeah, I think it kind of inspired my mum to start growing vegetables and to start making her own wine, which was abysmal.
I'm Lucy Siegel, and I am a journalist specialising in climate and nature and a massive fan of The Good Life. It definitely changed behaviours. It sold a lot of self-sufficiency books and courses afterwards. There was a real spike in interest. I don't think it created substantive change because it didn't create sort of system change, but it got a lot of people to trial things, whether that was spinning yarn for their own clothes, growing vegetables, which is a very sort of accessible way of doing it. I don't know how many people gave up their jobs, as Tom did, but certainly people had a go at ploughing up the back garden or using a rotavator.
Did it inspire you?
I have been very, very inspired by the programme because my whole professional career and a lot of my private world has been about trying to communicate practical action for the benefit of the environment, so living with a lighter footprint. And when I look back now, I started writing one of the first newspaper columns in a national newspaper. It was The Observer back in 2004. And my first column, I had no idea how to approach this subject, which was essentially just advice to people on how to live with a lighter footprint. And of course, I reference very heavily, I lean into The Good Life.
So Lucy, I am uprooting my entire life, me and my husband, to pursue a land-based life. Do you think Tom and Barbara would approve of this?
100% they would be so on your side, because isn't now the time to claim this resilience? We know about all the gaps in policy. We know that clients, just to be really serious, which obviously The Good Life was not for a minute, but we know what the road has led us to, an acute climate and nature crisis. And I can't think of time that's better spent than growing and producing nutritious food and putting nature back into the soil, the depleted soil. You know, I've gone on about doing your own compost at home, for example, for many years. It's a transformative process that you can do in your backyard. And the first time I really saw that was Tom and Barbara doing all these crazy processes in a suburban environment, which I really related to because, like so many people, I'm a child of the suburbs, really. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel we've got anything as relatable now, strangely, but good on you for doing it. And I think a lot of people will actually be wildly jealous.
Now, in case you think I've completely lost my marbles, I should say I'm not entirely unprepared for my Portuguese adventure. I have trained in permaculture. I spent 2 weeks working on Portuguese farms, and I have a pretty good knowledge of growing fruit and vegetables. But I do realise that the steepest of steep learning curves lies ahead. That's why in this episode, I'll be taking some advice from experts in how to live the good life. People who have been there and done it. First, to a festival of regenerative agriculture in a field in Hertfordshire. I'm at Groundswell Festival because there are a lot of people here who know a lot of stuff about growing food. There are experts here who know about soil, water, biodiversity. These are all things that I really need to think about. So I'm here to get guidance. My first advisor had his own calling to the land after a very successful career in music. Andy Cato is a DJ and one half of the band Groove Armada, but after 20 years of international stardom, he took on a farm in France and never looked back. Now he's a tenant farmer for the National Trust and co-founder of Wildfarmed, a food and farming business which grows wheat without chemicals to make flour. You kind of know my story, and I know that your story started off in a similar vein, in that you were trying to pursue a self-sufficient life.
Yeah, I was. I don't come from a farming background. I never even transplanted a bedding plant, never mind planted seeds to grow food, until I was coming back from a gig and read an article about the environmental consequences of food production, which had a line which said, if you don't like the system, don't depend on it. So my whole drive was self-sufficiency, and the first book that I got was John Seymour's Guide to Self-Sufficiency.
Which I also have, which I love.
So I had a sort of quite a long period of time taking that around in my record box and had these sort of odd scenes like in Pasha in Ibiza. It's all going off, smoke lasers, thinking about Topsoil with John Seymour peeking out of the record box. It's a bit surreal. So it all started from there, really. And it was only much, much later that the idea of farming on a bigger scale came about.
So what did you think was wrong with the system?
Well, I hadn't really thought about the system. I was an occasional buyer of organic food based on reading a couple of articles about pesticides. I didn't even think of food as a system. I just went to the shops, like most people. And then I started to realise that actually how we farm determines everything. The state of nature, the state of the climate, whether we've got an abundant, resilient future or whether we haven't, the state of our health, the state of our rivers. It's all determined by that, which is not something I'd ever thought about.
So you read this article and then you thought, I want to grow my own food?
Yeah, I thought I'd have a stab at it, yeah. I mean, we happened to be living in France at the time. I could live anywhere because I was just travelling around, DJing and playing music and whatnot. And so I thought I'll have a go at that and built a little mini greenhouse. Went down the garden centre, got some, lettuce seeds and tomato seeds and started to make a series of unforced errors and get it all wrong, basically. I wasn't good at growing vegetables because I'd never grown vegetables, but it very quickly got to a point where I'd seen seeds become plants, plants become food on the table. There's something very primal about putting your own food on the table. And these processes where you see these tiny, tiny specks of seed become all of this life, it just changed my life forever. I was like, why is this not the first and last thing we're taught at school? This is ridiculous. Everything comes from here. And I was fascinated by it. So all of my reading was initially horticultural and then agricultural. And I was just down there doing it all the time. And so the vegetable patch got more proficient. And then it became a market garden. And I started selling vegetables at a local town. And then I did the mad sort of pivot, selling my publishing rights, which is a musician's pension, to buy a farm and try and do it at scale. And that's when it all went wrong again.
What went wrong?
Everything went wrong. I realised that being a farmer requires a vast array of skills, of which I had none. And I also, at the same time, was confronted with the idea of trying to grow crops naturally on heavily degraded soils. And I had a kind of first-hand experience over a very large acreage.
So my situation is the same. Not a farming background, not even a casual vegetable growing background. I've never even had a pet, and yet I have this calling to grow my own food. You're saying you realised you didn't have the skills. My question is, what were the skills that you realised you didn't have that I'm probably going to need?
Well, I think they are different farming to self-sufficiency. I mean, a lot of farming knowledge is around mechanics. I think with horticulture, with vegetables, it is a whole universe, but at least it's more manual. And so you remove some of the mechanical complexities, at least. I mean, there's so many things that I got wrong when I started growing veg. I mean, I could pick any number of examples, but one example of thousands was I was getting all these insect problems. And I thought, this is really annoying. And I looked online and I saw these people who were selling these insect netting for organic growers. And I'm like, perfect. So I got some rolls of insect netting. I got some recycled fence posts and spent ages building this large, sort of about 20 metres by 3 metres structure, very Heath Robinson, to keep the insects out. Very pleased with it. Then the following day, it got windy, the whole thing fell over. I built it again, it fell over again. I built it again with these reinforced corners and it stayed up. And just as after I'd built it the third time, made it stay in one place, I picked up my first ever book on companion planting. Have you read about companion planting? So the idea of companion planting, like when you put marigolds next to tomatoes, is that you actually want insects to come in. And I was completely persuaded by this. So down came all of my netting into the barn, And we moved into an era of companion planting. So there's innumerable steps like that, from which the conclusion was diversity of plants at all time, keep the soil covered at all time. And if you do those two things, I don't think you can go far wrong.
Oh my gosh. That's just such lovely thoughts and pointers. And just to hear your journey and where you started, and that you also felt a compulsion to pursue this route of life, which I also feel. I think people think I might be a bit mad.
Yeah. Well, you can see why people think you're a bit mad. And I think not worrying about people thinking you're a bit mad is one of life's great skills. It's, I'm a big believer in not caring if people think you're mad, otherwise I wouldn't have done anything. But no, and I think it all sounds very idyllic, and a lot of it isn't. And a lot of it is like repetitive jobs when your back's hurting and it's 35 degrees and you're just thinking, sod it, I can't be bothered with this anymore. And that there will be many, many moments like that. What I've actually found is that physical work, for all those moments of quiet despair, which there'll be dozens, but physical work as part of a plan which is coherent and important to you is the best tonic in the world.
I completely agree with that. When things are a bit much and then you apply yourself to some sort of labour, it's sort of meditative. But that point about dozens of moments of despair, you're so right. Yeah. When your back's hurting and it's hot and you're like, oh my God, there's so much to do, that I will keep that in mind.
Yeah, then there'll come a moment where it's sort of 7:30 or maybe 8:30 in Portugal before it gets cool enough and you crack open a cold lager and it's the best moment of your life, so stick with it.
Andy Cato there, and I cannot wait for that first cold beer moment.
Fancy calling little things like you swine. You're not, are you, my little Pinky and Perky?
Barbara.
Well, Barbara and Perky.
That's walking bacon, and don't you forget it.
Misery.
The Goods took on chickens and pigs to enhance their Surbiton smallholding, providing them with a ready supply of meat and eggs that they would use in their barter economy as currency. But my animal husbandry skills are non-existent. Fortunately, at Groundswell, there was no shortage of advice.
Hi, I'm Helen Browning. I'm Chief Exec of the Soil Association, and I'm also an organic farmer in Wiltshire. If you've got 3 acres, you want small animals, not big animals, probably.
Yeah, no cows.
And I think the key thing with animals, obviously, is providing them with an environment they're going to be happy in, but also an animal's worst enemy is another one of the same species. So actually, that need to rotate and the ability to use animals well to stimulate your system. And I think if you're looking to try and produce probably quite a lot of food on 3 acres, which you can produce a lot of food on 3 acres, you've got to use animals quite judiciously within that, because, you could have one cow take up your 3 acres and you would just produce milk. But if you're trying to produce a whole range of things, then thinking about how those animals are going to aid your crop production and fit within it and rotate around it, giving them a good life, but also giving you all the productive benefits of having them on site, that's worth thinking through.
What would you put on 3 acres?
Well, I think poultry is an obvious thing to think about, because I think you've got eggs and or meat, depending on what you decide to do. You don't need that big an area to have some chickens, and if it's about self-sufficiency, even 5 or 6 chickens will actually produce you with more eggs than a family you're going to probably ever eat. I think you could be looking, if you want to get into, want to produce your own milk as well, then I would be a little bit more inclined, somebody will probably shoot me, to think about goats rather than
I was thinking about
cows. Goats can be tremendously challenging animals, and they're great in many ways because they'll eat anything, but they're awful in lots of other ways too, because they'll eat everything, and they can be quite hard to keep in where you want them to be. Think through how you're going to manage your goats, but I think again you've got a relatively small animal that will give you sensible amounts of milk and potentially some meat as well, that can fit within that 3 acres and probably usefully use all your veg waste and all that kind of stuff. Any surplus crops that you've got, if it was me, chickens and goats would be probably a good place to start and test your hand.
As we got chatting, Helen shared with me a new passion, which represented a shift away from the large-scale cattle rearing she is more used to. It involved planting what she called a forest garden, A multi-layered edible landscape that sounded very enticing.
I've now got some land, which 10 acres of it is in this expanded forest garden, and that is a really joyful site. So it makes me very enthusiastic about what you're going to be doing in Portugal, because it's really beautiful. It's so varied, and on this one quite small for us field, so much food is flowing now. So we've just had our first proper cherry harvest, just incredible, beautiful cherries. We're growing blackcurrants, gooseberries, plums, damsons, pears, walnuts, almonds, apricots, raspberries, strawberries. I mean, it's just incredible. And what this little field that was just feeding a few sheep a few years ago, so not that productive really, and now it's full of people and life, and that feels like a really special thing. I mean, whether the economics really stack up at the moment, I don't know, but it feels amazing.
And did you plant that?
Yeah, so we planted all of that. So we designed this 10 acres with all the different varieties of stuff and the different combinations of things. We've also got a horticulture unit there with a polytunnel and some market gardening. It should have poultry in it. We don't at the moment, but for various reasons, but it should have chickens in it as well. And it is the most joyful and beautiful site. And the one thing that I did there, which was to plant everything on curves.
On the contour?
Yeah, well, it's a flat field, but actually I didn't want to have everything in straight lines. There was no need to there. And so it's actually aesthetically really pleasing. And I suppose that's the other thing that's worth thinking about. How do you make this as beautiful as possible?
Because that's one of the harvests, right?
It Beauty. Is. Beauty is such an important part of the mix. And if you're going to be spending a lot of your life in that place, you want it to be as serene, as beautiful as possible. So I think really thinking about that in the planning phase. I get a lot of joy from this field, and a lot of people are now starting to take part of their livelihoods from it. But yeah, I just think trees are such a big part of our future, and we're growing far too little of our own soft fruit and top fruit in the UK. We're importing most of it. So it's my little contribution towards that too.
Did anything go wrong with those 10 acres?
Oh, well, I guess in some ways we were being quite experimental. So we planted lots of different things, some things which are probably quite marginal, like almonds. So there have been a few surprises. Some things like dessert grapes, it's a very heavy clay soil, they just don't like it. So some things have really surprised us, like the almonds have grown really well.
Wow.
Yeah, what went wrong? I thought the field was fox-proof and it wasn't. Hence we have no chickens.
Find a way.
We're really monitoring everything we do quite hard. We've got little tags on every tree so that we can pick up lots of data, so that we can learn what varieties work best, what tastes best. Taste is terribly important. Trying different ways of planting trees and trying to get as much information from this site as we can so that other people can benefit from some of that.
I loved the sound of a forest garden, which also goes by the name of a food forest. And one of the biggest champions of forest gardening in this country is Martin Crawford. He planted his food forest across 2 acres of the Dartington estate in Devon more than 30 years ago. Today, it is flourishing. Well, how else can I describe this other than we are walking through a forest? It just looks wild. It looks wild, and it looks like it's been here forever. I mean, it kind of has been here for a long time. But it's all intentional, all planted by Martin and managed. And we are just walking through the forest, picking leaves off of one plant, picking flowers off the next. It honestly feels like foraging. It's absolutely just incredible. And comparing it to what it was when Martin first came here, which was basically just a grass field. I mean, it is a tapestry of green. You look up, there's a little bit of blue sky, and then it's just trees and shrubs. Amazing. And so cool on this very hot day. Martin began his professional life training as a computer scientist, but after a spell volunteering to work on organic farms, he fell in love with plants.
Well, I'd kind of trained as a market gardener, organic market gardener, growing annual veg to send to market. And I was doing that, and I could do it. It was okay. But then I kind of had this realization that even though I was doing it organically, it still wasn't that sustainable. Basing your whole growing system on annuals actually isn't that sustainable. It's also very hard work for not much reward, apart from the moral reward of knowing you're growing good food. And at that time I discovered what Robert Hart, who did the first experiments in forest gardening in this country, in Shropshire in the 1980s, what he was doing. And went to see what he was doing. And that was quite inspirational to see what he was doing. I thought, yeah, I'd like to do more of this.
And that was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
As Martin showed me around, his garden reminded me of that first room in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. An incredible edible paradise. Minus the chocolate fountain, of course. But everywhere we went, he had plants that you could just snack on.
This is another tree vegetable we use the leaves of. And let me just... Do you want to pick a leaf?
Yes, I'd love to pick a leaf.
Pick a leaf and try it.
Okay.
I'm going to do one as well.
Oh. Oh my gosh. It's so sort of savoury and a bit garlicky.
It's kind of onions and garlic and spices all in one leaf.
Yes, what is that?
It's called Toon. T-O-O-N.
I'm getting my phone out to take notes.
I mean, it's not from Newcastle, but it's called Toon.
Oh, right.
It's from China. And these leaves taste... It's a complex flavour. I think it's a bit like vegetable bouillon flavour.
It's unbelievable. You're absolutely... yes, it's like a stock.
And it's like a stock,
but
isn't it?
in a leaf.
In a leaf. We put these in salads, but we also put them in stuff we want to cook with, just instead of using a stock. You know, and we dry them as well. We dry them and powder them and use it as like a bouillon powder in winter.
Martin, I would love to see you in action, and I'm setting you a challenge, which is to gather a salad, basically, all of flowers, leaves, whatever you would for a salad.
Absolutely.
And see how many things you
put
come
in
up
some
with.
Turkish rocket flowers to start with.
Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. I've never actually seen that, Turkish rocket.
Yep. A few mulberry leaves. So this is white mulberry. So all mulberry leaves are edible. But white mulberry are the tastiest, and you can see I'm just picking off some of the younger ones. And the older ones we use cooked, the younger ones are nice in salads. Mulberry leaves probably have more protein in than almost any other leaf on the planet. They have about 10% protein fresh, and that goes up to about 30% when they're dried. It's like 3 times as much as spinach has, for example.
Am I right in saying this is one of the oldest most established forest gardens in the UK?
Yeah.
But I mean, what is a forest garden?
Well, it's kind of a layered garden of plants at different heights, starting with trees, maybe tall trees if you've got a big enough space, small trees, shrubs, perennials and ground covers down on the ground. In a way, it's like an overplanted and underplanted orchard. So if you imagine your orchard trees, but then you make it all much more diverse than an orchard. You know, you do a lot of stuff underneath and you maybe have a few taller trees poking through as well. And it's a bit like that. We're kind of trying to mimic a natural ecosystem to a large degree. And that's where its kind of strength and resilience comes from. It's a bit more open than a forest, because if you actually want to grow productive plants to eat, you know, all the way down to ground level, in Britain, you've got to let a bit of light through. So it's not as dense, it's not as shady down here underneath the trees as a woodland forest, as it were. If you're cultivating the ground every year and growing annuals in it every year, that takes a huge amount of energy, whether you're doing it with a fork or a tractor. So it's all about sustainability, but also resilience as well, resilience to things like climate change. If we're going to have resilient growing systems, we need diversity, and this is a really good example of diversity. This is worth looking at as we go underneath it.
Oh yeah.
These little fruits, green fruits. If you pick a few of these, rub them around in your fingers, have a sniff.
I think I might know what this is.
You might know what this is.
Oh my gosh. So they're tiny little sort of berries, green. They look like unripe green berries. They smell peppery.
They smell peppery and citrusy, don't they? And it's one of the Szechuan peppers. Basically, the Szechuan pepper family has lots of different species in it, and they're all shrubs like this.
It's absolutely covered.
And as you can see, it's absolutely covered.
So do you put Szechuan pepper in everything? Because that's a lot of peppercorns.
I don't put it in everything. That would be too much. But the young leaves have the same fragrance. So we use those in salads. We use those if we're making ferments, you know, like kimchis and stuff like that. They go in that. The whole point of a forest garden is you're stacking crops together. In other words, you're using the same space for lots of different things. So obviously this space here is for the Szechuan pepper, but underneath it, there's all sorts of other things growing in the same space.
Okay,
there's things like herbs like lemon balm here. This is a
wild
herb.
strawberries?
Yes, wild strawberries. There's a herb called sweet Sicily here. It is kind of anise flavoured. And then the fern you can see here is one of our perennial vegetables, and that is called ostrich fern. So the ostrich fern is our first vegetable up of the year. Those shoots come up at the end of February, and they're called fiddleheads, the little curled up shoots. And you can't eat them on all ferns, but only a certain few, and this is probably the best one for our climate.
And that's quite a popular vegetable in Asia, isn't it?
Yeah, in Asia and in the US as well, where it's native as well. Very popular there. The hostas, all hosta shoots are edible.
And so many people have hostas in their garden, and they're actually edible.
Yeah, and they come from Asia, hostas from Asia, and they're widely used as a vegetable in lots of different parts of Asia. So it won't be news to anybody living there. But here, people are amazed you can actually eat hosta shoots because half the people have got them in their gardens. It's such a common garden plant.
Also, is everything in here edible? I mean, am I just walking past one after another edible plant?
Almost everything is edible. There's a few plants here that are here for other uses or actually just to help the system function. So the high trees, a few scattered high trees we've been walking underneath are actually Italian alder, and those are here. Their crop is nitrogen for other plants. So there's nothing edible for us off an Italian alder, but actually it's really helping everything else grow. So some plants are called system plants are like that. Basically, they're here for some other reason. There's nothing edible for us on them, but they're here for nitrogen or to attract beneficial insects at a particular season or, whatever. But most of what you see is edible.
We went on to sample vine leaves, smelt some fantastic Swiss mint, and we saw huge shiitake mushrooms growing out of logs. There was a young robin hopping along a few paces behind us, curious as to what on earth was going on. Martin was constantly busy, nipping and picking leaves for our evening side salad.
Right, okay, salad. Let's see what we've got. I'm going to open this bag because you've been carrying it. Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm just getting aromas from it as well. We've just got a bunch of different leaves, berries, flowers. So also quite a lot. So give us a rundown of what's here.
So what we've got here in my hands, we've got some lime leaves, some small leaf lime, a little bit of toon leaf. We've got a bit of houtunia there. The little white flowers are from the Siberian purslane, the beetroot flavoured one.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one or two leaves of that as well. There's some sweet Sicily here for the anise flavour. A couple of black currants, a bit of lemon balm in there. Oh, a hosta flower there as well. It's quite a nice handful.
So about 15 different plants in your hand,
yeah.
I think. So I've got a little pocket full of different folded up leaves, flowers, berries, and I'm just going to try them all together. Wow. Oh, I'm getting anise, I'm getting some sort of juiciness, crunchiness, bitterness.
It's so interesting because flavours of some leaves take a little while to come through, don't they? And so you get an initial taste and then it develops as you chew or eat. It's so interesting, kind of mixing all these leaves together. You get such an interesting outcome.
It's so different to a salad bag, that you get in the shops.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. There are so many different flavours that sort of keep your attention. I'm just going to have another go, actually. Oh, I've got currant this time. Oh, it's so nice.
It's so nice having some fruits in the salad. I don't know why more people don't do that, actually.
Yes.
Because you're eating through leaves and then suddenly you get a fruit and it changes the sensation completely.
It's like a practical example of what a space like this can do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you end up eating the things that you've just picked, you're just going to have a whole different relationship with the meal you're eating.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, you are.
So it's sort of, the whole experience is intensified. One, because these flavours you're not going to find in the supermarket. And two, because you've just walked around picking them from all these different plants straight into a bag.
Yeah.
Martin Crawford in his inspirational forest garden in Devon. It left me with so much food for thought, and I now have a very long list of plants that I want to integrate into my garden in Portugal. My final advisor was keen to talk to me about one key theme we are yet to touch on: community relations. And getting on with the neighbours was at the heart of the good life. Here are Margot and Jerry trying to come to terms with what is going on next door.
And why is Barbara ruining a perfectly good greenhouse?
They're converting it. They're going to keep chickens.
Chickens? Does the Residents' Association know about this?
I really don't know.
Well, they should. This whole thing is getting entirely out of hand.
I'm Rob Hopkins. I'm the co-founder of the Transition Movement, and I was a permaculture teacher for many years. The Transition Movement is really about how do we respond to the climate crisis from the bottom up, from the community scale. It started in my town of Totnes. There's now transition groups in 50 countries around the world. And permaculture is a design system that draws from nature and how natural systems work, and it's a wonderful solutions-focused thing.
Rob set up his own permaculture community in Cork in Ireland in the 90s. It's still going strong today, and Rob was keen to stress the importance of integrating with the local community.
So Bill Mollison, who is one of the co-founders of permaculture, he said, the most ethical thing you can do is buy some land, grow your own food, plant your food forest, plant your fruit trees, and live like that, And that was kind of what we were working on, right? And then in about 2004, I had my climate change dark night of the soul, where the penny really dropped. And I remember having a conversation with my wife where we thought, okay, we're sitting here, we have our land, we have our fuel forest planted, we have a vegetable garden full of food, we have a house that we're building. What happens if the town down the road runs out of food and has a big power cut? And these shocks that we could see were going to be coming and becoming more and more of a regular feature of our life. What happens if that all kicks off? Am I going to sit at the gate of this farm with a shotgun? I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. Either we all get through this or none of us get through this. And so for me, that was kind of quite a moment where actually I thought, okay, we've learned so much doing this on our piece of land down the end of a track away from everything. Actually, what we need to be doing is taking this into the cities, into the towns. It's unless what we've learned here becomes something that everybody's doing, then what's the point? So that was kind of our journey, really.
Well, you've touched on something, because the term self-sufficiency, it's sort of increasingly not quite sitting right with me, because it implies you're kind of this one man on an island doing everything yourself, and that you're siloed from the community within which you live.
Yeah.
That's very hard to do and not necessarily that desirable.
Well, it's also not possible.
Right.
You're not going to be able to make your own computer and your own frying pan. So for me, it's never about self-sufficiency. It's about self-reliance, really, in a sense.
Yes.
It's like having the skills and the confidence to know that you can turn your hand to what needs to happen. But for me, it's like if I was starting again now, if I was talking to myself in 1996 as I headed off to Ireland, with all my permaculture books, was I think one of the things is to really make yourself useful to what's already there. There's often, and I've seen in many places in Ireland and in Portugal and other places, these little bubbles of kind of British people and German people and Dutch people, and quite kind of insular little sort of communities. And, and I was probably the same. I didn't probably really integrate as well as I had a friend of mine there who was a British guy who lived there who was incredibly well integrated. He went to mass every Sunday. He wasn't even a Catholic, but he went to mass because that was how you met people. His kids all played Gaelic sports. Do you know what I mean? It's like actually to arrive somewhere and to make yourself useful rather than just focus on your own thing, and to try and seek out the wisdom that already exists in a place. When we then moved to Totnes later and started doing Transition Town, one of the first things we did there was I did a whole bunch of oral history interviews with older people in the town. How did this town work before there was cheap energy, when there was a local food system? What was that like? And recorded a lot of those interviews, and it was a really lovely, respectful way to land with the community that was already there.
Oh my God, that's such a good tip and such a good place to start, because there's a ruin on the land and it looks like there was an old oven, like a kind of dome oven, and I wonder if it was some sort of community oven. I don't know, and I've been trying to find some history from the town hall, but I'm not getting very far.
The people around will know.
Yes.
So there's something really, and people love sharing those stories. Find the cultural things that bring people together. You know, I recognise now, I don't drink tea. I've never liked tea. I kind of wish when I'd gone to Ireland, I just forced myself to like tea. Because there was almost this immediate thing, you'd arrive, well, if you have a cup of tea, oh, well, I don't drink tea. Ah, okay, well, who doesn't drink tea? Who's this strange fella? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I should have just gone, yeah, I'd love some tea, thank you. I love, you know, it's like there's just things which after a while you can build a sort of a distance between people, or people can sort of make snap decisions about you, and it's really like, I don't know, join the whatever the equivalent of the WI is, or all those different sort of community organisations that actually stitch everything together. You know, get involved with that and make yourself kind of indispensable to that.
It was such good advice from Rob and all those who have helped me in this programme. Suddenly, this huge change in life direction feels very real. I'll let you know how I get on with my vegetable growing and animal rearing, and whether we do actually manage to feed ourselves. I'll also be sure to pack a box set of The Good Life so Barbara and Tom can cheer me up when the going inevitably gets tough at times. And I'll leave you with this final word of encouragement. Here's Rob Hopkins again.
Just the last thing I would say is I'm really glad I did it. Like, I think it's an amazing experience. I think when I set off to do it, I had so many ideas and theories, and I was the most clumsy, impractical, hopeless character. And actually, when you put yourself in a situation where you have to learn things, I don't regret any of it for a minute. You know, it's such an amazing experience to give yourself. You'll find out so much about your adaptability and your resilience. You're just endlessly curious about what will work and what will grow and why did that work and what can we do with that. And we've got like a whole wheelbarrow full of this strange vegetable that I've never seen before that I grew because someone said it was a good idea. What are we going to do with it? How do I learn how to do that? And then it's like recipes, and you'll find out so much about yourself through doing this. And so it's like, as long as you can keep that curiosity, I think you'll love every minute of it. Well, maybe not every minute of it, but overall, you will be so glad that you decided to take that step, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great note to end on. I honestly can't wait.